What's up, everybody? This is Matthew from Puzzle Huddle. Welcome back to our series, Puzzle Huddle with Experts. We're looking forward to having a lot of different guests that are going to share with us insights on education, childhood development, culture, all important things for parents and for our culture. We're having a lot of great interviews, and we thank you for joining us. Today, I have an awesome guest, Dr. Marc Lee. Marc, could you please introduce yourself?
Well, Dr. Marc Lee, I'm a developmental and neurological psychologist. I have I completed my doctorate at Howard University in developmental psychology, and I'm a professor of psychology over at Prince George's Community College currently.
Okay, so most of us know exactly what developmental psychology is. I know, but can you help explain it to the people that might not intuitively understand it?
Developmental psychology deals with the entirety of lifespan development, from conception unto death. So from the time that the woman becomes pregnant, at that point, development starts. And so we discuss elements of development from fertilization through pregnancy, through birth, until late stage adulthood into death.
Wow, and how did you get into that? What happened? Because sometimes when people go get a Ph.D., there's something about their childhood that informed that interest. Was there something about your childhood that kind of led you to that focus or intention with your education?
Yes, well, growing up in the inner city and looking at different families and different trajectories of family members and different friends and their family members, and trying to understand what was the change that occurred for them that got them on that particular path to either be successful or to not be successful. So when you look at development, I wanted to get an understanding of how could we provide support to young inner city kids with the tools to be resilient, to be able to overcome some of the obstacles so they could be successful.
You're pointing to your childhood as the platform for this interest. Can you just describe what your childhood was like for us?
Well, we had when I was younger, my family was, we were living in a home, and our home actually caught fire. We transitioned from one environment into, from a suburban environment to an inner city environment, which was life-changing. You can imagine growing up in one arena and then transforming into another. And that was the impetus in terms of my mind when I look back. It wasn't the driver throughout my life entirely for this field, but it has informed my passion for it.
Yeah, some of those inflection points can create a profound change in your life, whether you're changing cities or changing schools or communities within your city. Yeah, that different location could definitely make an adjustment in your life path. For your PhD, can you tell us what you focused on for your PhD in terms of the research, and then maybe summarize to whatever degree you can the research?
Well, for my PhD, I looked at culture, academic self-efficacy, and academic achievement for young African-American males who are first-year students. So I wanted to look at the linkage between culture, its influence on academic self-efficacy, and how academic self-efficacy impacts academic achievement. And the research, in summary, showed that culture does influence one's academic self-efficacy, and that efficacy has a statistically significant impact or influence on academic achievement. And academic self-efficacy, to explain, is the idea that one believes and has the confidence in themselves in that particular arena.
All right, so you got me. I got culture and I got efficacy. Help me out with the efficacy. Is that success? Is it an achievement? Like, what is that? Just that getting good grades, or what do you?
Efficacy is the idea that you believe you can. Okay. You have the confidence in yourself, and you know that you have the skills to accomplish those goals and tasks.
Okay, so there's some linkage between culture and academic efficacy.
Self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy. And what is the relationship between the two?
Relationship between the two is that when you're in a communal environment, working in a peer group, that the individuals within that group help to encourage one another, and by showing your abilities and others believing in your abilities, that helps you to build confidence in yourself.
Awesome. So we got peer groups and subgroups of people and people that might. So a lot of times you'll see. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and there's a school called Bates Elementary School, and it's very impressive the way this hub of students that went to Bates Elementary School progressed as a peer group through high school, college, and even that peer group is 40 years old, and so many of them are still friends with each other and it's based on elementary school relationships.
Yes.
Which is just awesome. Like, I don't know what they were doing at that middle or at the elementary school to kind of create that lifetime experience, but somehow they've done it. So when we talk about cultural hubs, what is it about the African American community that might help establish the esteem and the self-efficacy that really puts people on a path towards achievement?
Well, I think that cultural ideal. My dissertation advisor, Dr. A. Boykin, he had a cultural model. He looked at Afrocultural values and factors that are cultural remnants from the African continent that our ancestors cultivated continuously within our American environment. And we take that culture, that communalism, that bond that we share between one another, that syncopation, the need for verve, even that movement that we want to have. And if we encourage that and set up environments that allows it to lead the child to their true selves, we can help them to develop.
Yeah, I notice it just in very informal interaction. When I deal with young people and when I watch some of my peers deal with young people, the first thing we ask is, how are you doing at school?
Right.
Right. How are you? Second question, how are you doing at school? And it's because we have the expectation and we want to set the platform in the direction that, these are the important things. There's lots of things that we're concerned about your life, but how are you, and then how are you doing in school as kind of the second tier of engagement. Well, what else is it about it what else about our culture might be very important to be aware of that kind of helps set our students up for high achievement and success?
Well, I think involved parenting, mothers in particular. I know there used to be this whole flow of research around fathers in the child's life, particularly when you look at young boys. But the mother's research shows that the mother's influence on young boys' mathematic achievement is greater than that of the fathers. So it's the idea of parents being involved in the educational process with their children, not being a static figure, if you will, but being immersed into that interaction with the child and helping them to understand their abilities are not set, they're not fixed, that they just put more effort into working and growing.
I see that exact thing in my home, and I really try to engage my kids in learning experiences, but nobody reading a book to my kids like my wife. There's nothing I can do to read that book with the same emotion, care and concern and connection. She's just gonna read that book better to them than I would, and I try, but
right.
Something about her mannerisms, maybe the relationship of a mother to their child, her expression to them, it seems to have more body and more like value. Even though we're both there and we're both present, it seems that there's a different level of connection when their mom is involved in the learning than when I'm involved in the learning. That's not to dismiss the dads, because we have...
Not at all. And you're exactly right. Each parent brings a different skill set into the parenting dynamic. And when you look at parenting is complex. And many parents are not versed in being a parent. You don't get an instruction manual on how to be a parent. You go off, you find a woman or husband to marry, and you marry them, and then you decide to start a family. You have a child. And now it's, okay, what am I to do? So the questions comes up to what resources can I look into to read to gain an understanding about how to parent. And that's the biggest question. It's being ways in which how we should be able to raise our children to be healthy and whole.
So Dr. Lee, this is very expert research, but you're also a parent. Can you let us know how your research, your expertise, how your professional acumen influences how you show up as a parent?
Well, one thing that I, as a parent, that I've done is I've incorporated a lot of the theoretical understandings in terms of cognitive development, social-emotional development, into how I parent. So there's a theorist named Erik Erikson in particular. It's this psychosocial theory that looks at the development of the individual based on the social interaction and the quality of care between the parent and that child. So when with my son in particular, I've always tried to give him challenges to meet. Those different questions that each stage of the development is being asked. So in the beginning, the ideal of trust versus mistrust. So when he was younger, we would, you know, make sure his needs were met, comfort him when he's painting or crying and he needs to get changed in a diaper or a baby bottle. And then as he became older into autonomy versus shame and doubt, I would give him choices of things. So you know, with young kids, they always want to have everything all at once. Well, you need to make a choice. So I started giving him those kind of tasks early on to help him to meet those challenges that I knew he would need to meet in order to develop more confident personality.
What were some of your most favorite or liked toys and games that you offered to your kids and that you guys had a good time with?
Well, a lot of the toys that we actually played with him were there were some puzzles we did have early on as well. We did do a lot of reading, more reading and books, and Legos. Actually, we built all sorts of Lego superheroes, Star Wars ships, and Lego Batman series, and I forget the other story, the other character that he used to like, Ninjago.
Yeah, there we go.
Ninjago, yes. We would do the Lego Ninjago, and we would build those sets together. So a lot of that time we would spend together. I would also use that as teachable moments of training to think in a certain way, organizing his work, and putting things in a certain location so that when you're looking for a particular piece, you know where that piece is and not scattered all over the room, as you often see with kids oftentimes. So I try to help him while having fun.
Yeah, and we talk about books. Now, your child is now a little bit older than the picture book age, but what were some of his favorite picture books at the time where you were reading along with him?
He used to love The Hungry Caterpillar, actually.
Yeah.
That was a favorite of his. We used to read that over and over and over again. There was another book, I forget the name of it right now, it kind of escapes me. I think it was If I Put You in the Zoo. That was another good book. So like each page, you turn over and it has like a portion of the animal, and the child has to guess which animal it is, and then you open up and it's like, oh, it's that animal.
Yeah, something about kids, they really enjoy repetition in a lot of cases.
Yes.
So you don't need a lot of different books. Sometimes 2 or 3 that they love, you can run those back repeatedly and still get the same excitement, engagement, even with seeing the same story over and over again.
Yes, you can. And actually, interesting enough, you can use other media sources too. Because, you know, there are lots of studies. Again, there are lots of studies that talk about the need for reading material and the lack of reading material in certain segments of our communities. In those communities, individuals can use music. Yeah. They can even use television shows. I know screen time is the big no-no kind of ideal, but you have a lot of very educational programs going on PBS where you can utilize it as a reading book, basically, by watching the story with the child and pausing and talking about different segments of the story. What's happening next? What do you think is going on? Why do you think this character did this? And those kind of factors actually help to develop reading abilities also.
All right, Dr. Lee, you started talking about different learning mechanisms and materials and modalities. Can you just unpackage a little bit more? Of course, we want to emphasize reading and literacy, but can you talk about some of the other learning environments and materials that are also relevant for kids and how parents can make the best use of some of those other form factors?
Well, as I was alluding to, research looks at a lot of the areas and different socioeconomic levels that you see. Individuals in the lower income sectors tend not to have as much reading materials, as many reading materials in their environment. So what you have to look at is utilizing the resources that are actually there. In all environments, you have music playing, and music has a lot of nuance in it. You can get a lot of language and vocabulary development out of music of various nature. And you can utilize television shows, as I indicated. A lot of educational shows on PBS, Nickelodeon, Nick Jr. They have a lot of television shows that are academically focused shows. On PBS, for instance, I used to have my son watch a show called Word World. And we would pause and talk about this sounds out of words. So they're using a phonic sound as well as a whole word teaching method.
Yeah.
And that actually helps to build up the vocabulary, so that his vocabulary has always been one of his strong suits. And I believe it's partly because we read a lot to him, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
But he watched that show and took in those images, and the phonics that was given to him allow him to be able to attack the words that he sees. So when he sees new words, he sounds it out and then builds it.
Yeah, there's a lot. Just looking at my own personal experience, from what I can remember of my childhood, all of my learning did not come from book reading. Between Sesame Street, there were a couple science shows, I forget the names of them, but Schoolhouse Rock and some other things that were all kind of set the foundation for academic achievement. So it wasn't only sit in the corner and read. There were lots of different things that helped to influence, what might be an academic trajectory.
Yes, and you have to utilize all the tools that you have in your environment, because you never know which modality actually sinks in with your child. Because some children, some individuals, some people tend to do things, be more visual about their preferences in terms of how they take in information. Some people are more tactile. They need to touch and be hands-on with things. And some people are very auditory as well. So they need to hear these things, and they can incorporate it and think about it and process it more fluidly.
Awesome. And there's one thing I want to thank you for. When I launched Puzzle Huddle, very early in the iteration or the beginning of the company, you were so supportive online. I could barely post anything without you chiming in on the post, hitting the like button. So when you're a new company, you overthink social media and posting. But I knew if I put something up, I know Dr. Lee gonna hit the like button on this, just to give it just a little bit of gas to help. So thank you for your lifetime support of the company, because you've been there since the beginning. When I first was launching these little tiny puzzles, even back then you were supportive.
Well, yes, and you are welcome. I thought it was very important what you were doing, what you and your wife had built, because when you look at this idea, as we were talking about the different modalities, that visual as well as auditory, these puzzles represent that visual. We as people in general, just any people, need to see themselves reflected in a variety of areas of life and the possibilities thereof. Because if you can't see yourself, if I may, if you can't see yourself being a scientist, building robots, how can you actually get to building robots one day?
Right.
If you can't see yourself being a doctor, a scientist, an astronaut. So as a psychologist, I understand the imagery of that. And I oftentimes, in my classes that I teach, talk about different things that students can do to help themselves become more successful through visualization.
Yeah, I've learned that, like you mentioned in the beginning, that self-efficacy, it happens oftentimes in community. Doctors were often exposed to other doctors as a child. It happens for police officers, law enforcement, military personnel, clergy, athletes. Many of them saw a specific path because they were exposed to people in that profession as a child. So there's a self-efficacy in the community and a connection to other people that have kind of had that same experience.
Yes, and I think for young children, you're helping them to work on that, actually.
Yeah, it's awesome work, and we're very excited. And thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Dr. Lee, for spending some time with. Go ahead and give me one of these. I really appreciate your time. We know each other, so hopefully I'll have a chance to interact with you some more coming up pretty soon. And thank all of you for watching and listening. We appreciate your support of Puzzle Huddle with Experts. We want to bring you a lot of cool videos, so take a moment and like the video, subscribe to our channel so you can stay connected, so you can see all of our new video announcements. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next time.
5